Yo, JD here, Limitless, and as you can see, back on F1 2020 as always. And we are finally back with one of my favourite series that I do on my channel. It is trying to attempt some world records, round some tracks, and of course, we are going to go in the classic cars because, to be honest, I just prefer driving these cars to the modern ones. I just love the challenge of it. I especially love the Ferrari F2004. It is very, very unpredictable. And you can see by the leaderboard, the likes of WF1 Vettel, who I know is absolutely rapid, and LCR Leopard has taken the challenge to go on this. And I think more and more people are starting to do these time trials now for the classics. And I encourage you all, please, do the best lap you can, because it will make it a lot more interesting. And we're going to start off with the Brawn. And just a bit of disclaimer, this is not the car I'm actually going to be using to make this attempt. I really wanted to just drive this car because I love the Brawn in combination with this track. And also a reminder, the Gravity competition, part 3, the final part before we do the shootout, is this track in this car. So set the fastest time you can. Make sure you use a link in the description or in the comments that I'm going to put down below if you want to enter the competition. You do have to be 18 and over. Some countries it won't let you register, but please do your best to sign up and you can win a Fanatec CSL Elite F1 set, the same they use in F1 esports for the past 3 years. It is exactly the same thing and it is a great prize to do. And I don't think this car and this track could be an any better combination than that. So good luck to the people who are doing it. And I really do thank everyone who has done it so far. As we cross the line, doing a 10.7. This was with the default setup, so I didn't really change anything. I'm pretty sure it was the default setup, which we're about to see here now. Yes, it was. It was enough for 391st. A good 2.5 seconds off of where we're going to be aiming for today, as now we have transferred over to the car that we are going to be doing this with, because you'll be able to see this is my first lap in this car with the stock setup against the Delta that I did in the Brawn car, and you will be able to see why it's pretty much no contest in terms of which car I choose. The Ferrari 2004 most of the time is going to be the fastest car in the classics, because in the straight line it's just so fast, and you can just see straight away we are incredibly rusty. I haven't driven this car for a couple of weeks, and after you've been driving equal cars and league racing and such, it's such a big difference. But you can see the straight line speed of the Ferrari is just absolutely insane. You can see how quickly, or we've even exceeded the Delta now. But going through the corners, the Brawn GP is still pretty good, and you'll be able to see it's through this corner, we just completely lose the car. Haven't gotten the validation so far. That is something at the very least, but wasn't really feeling too comfortable on my first lap. And normally I do not really a bad first lap or anything at all, but this attempt really shows how much you can improve in such a short space of time, because sometimes you hit a lap time, and it sounds like I'm probably saying the same thing every single time, but to be honest, it is true. As you can see, the Delta is just decreasing so quickly because of that straight line speed. It's just amazing how quickly you can improve, and you hit a certain lap time and you think there's no way you can improve that, but then just making a couple of tweaks to your driving style, you can end up finding sometimes even up to a second with the same setup as well. We're about to see on this lap, this is the second lap that I did in a row, and you can see already the improvement we are making. Over 3 tenths up now, and by the last sector you can see we gained probably about 3 tenths that last sector alone. So every lap I do when I'm trying to attempt a world record is really a learning phase. Didn't spin out this time, although we didn't actually lose or gain that much time there. It's just always about making those micro corrections, or just those very small adjustments in your driving style. If it comes to the steering, the braking, or the throttle, they really do add up over time here. And you'll be able to see on the exit of this, we're going to set our first valid lap in the Ferrari F2004. And as I cross the line, This probably won't be my final lap of the stock setup, as we do a 9.7. I always like to try and max out what I can do with no setup first, as it just gives me a chance to really feel the track and just gives me that confidence for when I do put on the setup. I know most of the time it's going to be well over a second in terms of what I'm going to be gaining fairly comfortably. So I always do this, even when I do the modern cars, when I do hot laps at the start of the games. I just go into the stock setup, and quite often a lot of people just do that as well because they just don't want to show their setups. And I think it just really gives you a good benchmark of where you're at compared to other people where you're just running the exact same thing. So you can see on this lap here, we're quite a bit up on this 9.7, which at the time didn't feel too bad or anything at all. So again, it just shows how much improvement you can make when you just have that extra confidence, just being that a little bit more aggressive than you were on the previous lap, just aiming to break that a little bit later, earlier on that throttle to run a little bit wide onto that curb. So that definitely wasn't a optimal exit, but nonetheless we are going to improve this time, and I was quite happy with this with a default setup time. It's a 9.3 when it's a 7.9 that we are aiming for. So 1.4 seconds to find, 88th on the leaderboard. And typically I found when this Ferrari F2004, if you're in like the top 100, then normally that's quite a good sign that you're doing something right with the default setup. So now we're just going to load in the number one guy setup, WF1 Vettel, who I raced with on a few occasions. Extremely fast, very fast. Don't think I've raced him in any leagues though, but just in 5 lap races and stuff like that, he's one of the fastest people that I've actually seen. So now we're going to put on the setup, and this car is just a completely different beast when you put on the setup. It's completely almost unrecognizable apart from the throttle feeling and the braking and stuff as well. So going into this turn 1, trying to take it a bit easier. So I'm going to go full force into here, making sure we just hit the apex and coming through the first 2 turns. We actually navigate that pretty nicely, and you can already see that we are over 2 tenths up, and we have 1.4 seconds to find it. Going at the end of the first sector, going into third gear, and this is something you find very quickly. Once I put on the setup, I really have to adjust my gear selection. Really probably have to put it in a little bit of a higher gear for most of the time, as we do get our first invalidation. It's just really to keep the car stable, because you've just got so much more rotation in the car now, or more downforce. You don't really want to be staying in the super low gears, although this car does respond to acceleration better in the lower gear you are. But I just feel to keep the car stable, particularly for the high speed, you're going to be having to run probably a gear higher than you would have done for the stock setup. But despite this lap being quite untidy, we're going to come across the line. It's an 8.6, which is not really too bad. I could see there was a lot of time left in that lap. As we set another lap after this, it's going to be an 8.5, and we're just going to continue again even more. That puts us up to P17 on the leaderboards already, and this leaderboard is probably one of the most competitive ones that I've done so far. So this is definitely not going to be an easy attempt to do by any stretch. Coming to the first sector, keeping it third gear, but short shifting into fourth gear, getting a pretty decent exit, almost 2 tenths up on an 8.5 here now. Going through into here, fourth gear, then up into fifth, short shifting, just to minimise the rotation, just to keep the car nice and stable. Keeping it in third gear for here, down to second, then short shifting into third gear, just to really maximise that traction. Use all of the track as much as possible. Second gear, then third gear once again, just to stabilise the car. But you can see it already wants to snap away from you, and we are just about a tenth up. So coming into here, really, this last corner is one of the most difficult corners, and you can see we've actually gained time on that exit, and you can see in this lap that there is a lot more time to find. So coming across the line, we are going to improve. It's an 8.5 once again, but that's why I always say it's really good to just keep on going within the laps. Even if you don't improve much, or even if you don't improve at all, I think just to build that momentum, to build that confidence, especially when searching for a world record, just to enable yourself to develop that muscle memory and that pattern, and just to know where the limits are, like I've done there, like I've seen on the exit of this corner. Now I know, since I've done a full lap, where I need to gain the time, because if you just keep on restarting, when it comes to you getting into sector 3 and you haven't done it for 5 laps, then you really lose that feeling of how to actually do that sector. So that's why I always encourage people to not restart, to just keep on going and going, just to really, really dial in that muscle memory. And you can see once again, a lot of raw laps we are showing in a row. This is typically what I like to do when showcasing these videos, just to show you of really the progression it takes. Now, some people who are absolutely rapid over a lap could probably get close to the world record very, very quickly, but the majority of people, it's definitely a little bit of a journey to get there, and including myself. My strength is not the 1 lap speed. My strength is really the race pace and just the consistency, to be honest. I don't drive on the limit over 1 lap. I'm very good at, I feel, at driving at 90% all the time. That is definitely my strength, and that's usually what pays off during the race here. So these kind of things here are something that really, really does challenge me. But you can see here, despite losing the car on a couple of occasions, it's an 8.3. So once again, that gives me some great confidence. That puts me into P6 now. So we are edging closer and closer to the target, but we are still 4 tenths away, which, no, I know there are some mistakes, but that's definitely a benchmark to aim for. It's going to be quite hard. So going through into here, we did play with the SERP ever so slightly, just to start tinkering it and stuff as well. And now we're about half a tenth up, going into the end of sector 1. So this is a purple sector for me so far. 3rd gear, because the car really does like it. You can see we've definitely been rewarded with that on the exit. Now into 50 meter board, that's where you turn in 4th gear, then holding it into 4th, then up into 5th, go down, and then 2nd, just for that little bit of extra rotation, keeping it in 2nd, because the car really does respond well to the low gears on the acceleration, but it's just much, much harder to control. This corner is very, very difficult. The car always wants to step out on the exit here. You can see we're about 2 tenths up on this lap here. 5th gear, just before the 50 meter board. That's me braking, turning, getting a very, very good exit off this corner. Lost a little bit of time though, in fact, so it's only a 10.5 improvement. And to be honest, when I did this lap, this felt like a very, very good lap, but it is only an 8.2. Still 3 tenths to find if we want this world record. And after that lap, I was a little bit concerned, because I felt like that wasn't really too bad whatsoever. So at this point, I go back to the drawing board. I play around with the setup a little bit more. Still LCR Leopard on an 8.0. So at this stage, we just take a little bit of probably a 5-minute break, restart the session. But the longer you play, the more you're kind of prone to mistakes as well. And that's definitely what I was approaching. I was starting to make a few little mistakes here and there. So coming into this corner, we're getting a validation, and that's really a sign that you definitely need to just step away and maybe even possibly restart the session, because something that people don't know is that there is a tyre wear glitch. There was on the last game and the previous game as well, where there is some tyre wear accumulated over a certain period of time. So what I do is, once I get to the stage where I feel I just can't improve no matter what, I just restart the session and then I go back in once again. And it also gives me a good opportunity to actually look at where I'm losing time in which sector. So we've restarted the session now. This is my first lap coming back into it here, and already for some reason, I don't know if it's a placebo, but I just instantly just feels like the car is much better. And you can see we're actually gaining time already on our first sector. So going through into that, it's a 16.8 first sector, only just slightly down. I actually think it was slightly faster than the world record here. See, about 300ths up once again. 4th gear, then keep it in 5th. And this is pretty nice so far. 3rd gear, then 2nd gear. Trying to hold it as much as I possibly can. Trying to carry as much minimum speed as I possibly can. Now going up to probably the second toughest corner I'd say on this track. Did that actually very, very nicely here. You can see we've actually gained a good amount of time for here. Now this is the hardest corner on the track here. Having to use this off-road, which is very annoying, but you can see the car wants to step away all the time. But despite that, we are going to improve on that. But once again, I didn't feel like... I felt like it was going to be a struggle to get this world record. You know, it's an 8-0, so I still have to find a 10th, almost 2/10 I have to find still if I want to beat this world record. And then again, we were getting to that stage where we were doing quite a lot of laps, but then just making mistakes, making invalidations, and we really needed to get this done very, very soon here. So again, we restarted the session, I think, at this point, going to Turn 1, just carrying a lot of minimum speed. And that's what I started to really figure out around this track, that this car, you want to carry as much minimum apex speed, because that actually keeps the car more stable. The slower you go at slow speed, the more unstable and unsettled it actually becomes. So when I'm coming to this corner here, 4th gear, just trying to keep the throttle planted as much as possible. Like going into these corners, you can see how much speed we are throwing into here, and in this one as well. If I go slower, the car becomes more unstable. So that's what I really did start to hit home with me. And that's where I started to make the improvements. You can see on the Delta, we're improving this time. I know I can improve coming off this last corner. So coming through here, getting a pretty good exit this time. And this felt like, not a perfect lap, but this felt like a pretty good lap. And I thought this was going to be enough for the world record. As we go across the line, it is a 7, but it is not enough. It is still 200ths away. And that is just soul destroying. 200ths away from the world record. And again, we're going to do a restart the session, because I always feel, again, I don't know if this is true or not, but I just find I for some reason just do better laps when I restart the session. You can see the sectors, we were actually quite a bit quicker in the first sector. It's just sector 2 and 3 where I felt sector 2 I couldn't really go any faster. So you can see here, starting to make a few more mistakes, just pushing too hard, just starting to overdrive. And that is the problem where you spend too much on a time trial. You just really, really do start to overdrive. But now, this is a very, very nice lap. So we break just after the 50 meter ball, locking up and still getting that rotation, still getting a very good exit here, staying nice and tight to minimize the distance of the track. And we are not going to improve. We're just fractionally down on the best time at the 50 meter ball. That's where you want to brake. Keep it in the high gear or 4th gear and not carrying enough speed through there. So again, about 400ths down. But now going to here, this is what I knew I had to really make up time, and going to just carrying a lot of speed. And you can just see the minimum speed we were talking about. We've carried so much minimum speed. Short shifting into 3rd gear, try and keep the car straight before going maximum throttle. 4th gear, 2nd gear, then into 3rd, midway half through the corner, and try and minimize the snap. And we do this very, very nicely. Going to this last corner, we are on such a good lap right now. Going to missing that curb on the inside again. Such a good launch off this corner. You can see the Delta is going up so much, minimizing the distance of the track, staying as far left as I possibly can. What time is this going to be? It's a 7.827, almost a 10th clear at the top of the table. And that felt like a very, very nice lap. But I still feel there is probably a 0.6 in there. I reckon a 6 on a perfect lap. And probably someone would just come on and beat that now, because that normally happens all the time as soon as I post this video. But I was very, very happy with that lap. In fact, a 6 on a perfect one. The setup I'm actually using is actually exactly the same as the world record. I did chop and change a little bit, but in the end decided to just really stick with that. And that's what I really aim for as well. I want to try and beat someone using their own setup. It's like on Call of Duty and just picking up someone else's gun and using that. It just feels a little bit more satisfying when you do it in that way. But that was enough for the world record around Brazil. I really hope you enjoyed that one. Give it a like if you enjoyed the series, if you're happy to see it back. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, and I will catch you soon. Peace.